Hello everybody, I hope you're all well and welcome back to Voicenotes with Jordan Theresa. How is everybody doing today? This episode is a pre-recorded moment. I mean, technically all my episodes are pre-recorded, but this is especially pre-recorded moment. I'm recording this on the Tuesday. It's going to be going up on the Monday when I'm on my way back from Glastonbury. I feel like I've said this like 1,000 times, but yes, I will be dead to the world. Like how this podcast episode finds you. It's going to be fair, it'll be 6 a.m, so I'll probably still be up. I will probably still be up. My coach is until like 2 p.m, so I will be stalking the comments I stalk the comments anyway, but I'll be reading them like it's a group chat because I will be not feeling very good. But how is everybody doing today? I hope this finds you guys on. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a beautiful sunny Monday morning, hopefully. Who else is watching Love Island? Guys, Colour me gagged. What a good season. They heard people's complaints. I've made a few videos about Love Island because it's just an absolute gold mine, like most reality TV, but especially Love Island. It's just a gold mine for like young British societal analysis and dating culture. It's just so good. So I've made a few videos about Love Island, but I made a TikTok last year because last year I haven't watched Love Island for a couple of years, and it's honestly because it got so boring. I don't like watching the All-Star seasons. I think they're lame. And the last two seasons really weren't very good last two seasons? Yeah. The last two seasons really weren't very good in my opinion. They were really boring. And I watched the US season of Love Island, which was so good. And I was like, see, people still want this kind of TV. It's just something is going on wrong in the casting. Something's going on in the production. And I remember I made a TikTok last year about how like them adding Joey Essex in was like the exact opposite of what people want. Like people want normal people on the show. And this season is so good. Feel free to skip forward because I'm going to talk a little bit about Love Island for a second. But I just need to say that Harry is an absolute Hall of Famer contestant. Incredible work. Like he is insane. And he has the object permanence of a baby and I'm obsessed. Like and also him and Dijon. Dijon is, I've been saying for a really long time that Love Island needs to bring in more compulsive liars and Dijon is one of those. Dijon is like, I think what makes his compulsive lying so funny is that it's very clearly not intentional. And I think that he genuinely believes what he's saying in that moment. But again, because he has the object permanence of a baby, what he wants changes dependent on who he's with. Who else do I like from the season? I love Yasmin. Again, no one has bombshelled the way that Yasmin has bombshelled. Love her. And I'm beginning to warm up to Helena. At first, I really wasn't loving Megan, Meg, and Helena. And I think the reason why was because when their men's heads would turn, first of all, they'd forgive them straight away and not forgive the woman. Second of all, they would go and resort to insulting the woman like straight away. Like it was like natural instinct. Like one of them called Yasmin boring. Another one called Melisha saying like, oh, you're lucky that he rejected you. Even though Dijon was like egging Melisha on to speak to him. Like this was Dijon. Dijon would say to Megan, I don't want to talk to anyone else. And then literally to Melisha, he'd be like, no, I want you to pull me for chats. I want to talk to you. I'm not closed off. I'm obsessed. So that's why, those three weren't sitting right with me. And unfortunately, Irish Megan sort of just got caught in the crossfire with that one. But I will say I'm warming up to Helena. I think the reason why I'm warming up to her is because she is currently going through the universal experience of when a man changes for someone who isn't you, or when a man changes for the woman that he didn't hurt. Like me and Jack, my housemate, we were watching it it's just because it's such a universal experience. Like, I think this has literally been my experience in literally every single one of my relationships. I break up with them and they change for the better. Like it's actually insane. And this is the thing, is that the type of change which is enacted through breaking up with someone or ending things with someone like Helena did, that type of change would not have been enacted if you stayed with them. I think that's like the gag, right? They would not have changed if you'd stayed with them because they think that you're just going to put up with that kind of behavior. And so in a way you are setting them free, but also it is so painful, and I feel really, my heart goes out to Helena. I'm rooting for you, Helena, now. I wasn't vibing at first, but now I'm rooting for her. And I don't really have any opinions on anyone else in that villa, really, but I'm really, really enjoying this season. And do you guys, I feel like every podcast episode, I reveal like a new aspiration of mine. Fun fact about me, I have like, this has been an actual real thing, I swear. One second. An odd like aspiration of mine is I have always wanted to go on Love Island, and I know but it's one of those ones where it's like, I think it's easy for me to say I want to go on Love Island, but would I ever put an application through? I'm not sure. Like, so I've been wanting to go on Love Island. I remember when I started watching it when I was 19, I was like, or 18, I was like, I would love to go on this show. And as I've gotten older, I still want to go on it, but I'm not sure if I really want to go on it enough to apply. Like, my housemate was like, oh my God, like, let's send out your application now. I was like, whoa. I was like, whoa. Like, as soon as shit got real, I was like, oh, maybe I don't want to do this. But I would just love to go on that show. And I think like there's a lot of reasons why like sort of hold me back. Like, number one, this isn't me speaking negatively about my looks at all. I do think I'm very hot and sexy, but there is a kind of like typecast woman that goes on that show, and I don't fit that typecast. So I think I would have a bit of a hard time. But also, the men that they put in there aren't my type. Like, my type is, I mean, has a Salomon ever graced the Love Island villa? Probably not. Like, I just like men that dress cool and have interesting hobbies. I will say, like, my type seems to be, and I used to be very like, I want to date a man that's got an office job. I find office jobs so sexy. Now I've actually found that my dating history, the guys that I've liked the most that I've dated have all... Hello. Sorry guys, I'm having stress. My bathroom smells like drains and it's disgusting, and I don't know how to fix it, and my landlord isn't replying to me, so it's fabulous. Anyways, my type is, I've found the guys that I've liked the most that I've dated have all been creatives. So I never ever thought I would be that girl. But the thing is that creative people, they tend to dress better. Like, do you know what I mean? But you know, I just like it when a man dresses well, but like to my style. Like the guys in Love Island, I'm sure to a lot of girls, they're like well dressed, but to me, they aren't well dressed. Like, they're very boohoo man coded, and that's not my type. And like, I think every man that goes into the Love Island villa is boohoo man coded. So I think I would struggle there with just like not only finding people that I like, but also finding people that like me. Also, I can imagine that Love Island producers would not be thrilled to have me on, being as I've been like critical of the reality TV medium as a whole and the ethics of sort of producing reality TV shows. And I've also been critical of like past contestants of past seasons, and not even necessarily critical, I've just analysed past seasons, and I'm not sure if they'd be crazy about getting me on. But also like that, it would just be so fun. And I think what I would enjoy about going on is because this is the kind of work that I do. Yeah, sure, I'd be leaving my work for however long, but I'm not like quitting my job to go on the show. I think when you quit your job to go on the show, the stakes are a lot higher, where you're sort of more willing to couple up with people that you know you don't really like that much just because you want to stay in. I'm not being funny. I don't think I'd be that fussed about staying in. I would honestly just want to do it for the experience, low-key. And also because I've got a job to go back to, the stakes are a lot like lower. And I think in that way, like if I ever went on the show, I would hope that I'd be quite authentic, but who knows? That would just be like, that is like one of my I feel like nobody would expect it as well, because everyone always talks about, at least me and my friends talk about, if you go on one reality TV show, what would you go on? And mine has always been Love Island. I have had a very tame and calm weekend because I'm Glastonbury prepping. I'm leaving. I'm getting the coach tomorrow at 12:30. And I've nearly packed all my stuff. I'm having to bring an extra tote with me because I can't fit it all into my bag. But should we run through some of the acts? Wait, no, I've already said this in the last episode. You know what? We'll cover this all in the Glastonbury debrief episode. I know you guys are so bored about me banging on about it. Thank you guys for helping me choose some of my outfits. Outfits are all prepped. My photo dump is going to look so good. I'm so excited. Oh my God. So I don't really have any thoughts of the week this week. All my thoughts of the week were related to the film Deep Blue Sea. And I think because I've just started this episode on the foot of, this is like talking about Love Island and how I want to go, excuse me, how I'd love to go on Love Island. You know, I know a lot of you girlies, you don't watch Love Island, so I don't want to isolate people further by just talking about shit that nobody knows what I'm talking about, like Love Island and Deep Blue Sea, the duality of women. But today's episode, I'm really, really excited to get into today's episode today. Are you excited to get into today's episode, Boots? Same. So, in today's episode, I want to talk about women who beg men to marry them. This is a continuation of a video essay which I uploaded. I believe I'm going to upload it last week. It would have been uploaded last week. Guys, silly moment. I thought that the video was due at the end of June. So I was like busting my ass. Like I was working every weekend trying to get this video up and running. Turns out the deadline was the end of July. So I did it for no reason. So I'm trying to get it pushed to being uploaded in June. If not, I want to upload it on the like absolute beginning 1st of July. So I'm not sure if this video will even be up yet, but hopefully it is. But this is a continuation of a video essay which I wrote about sort of the murky ethics of reality TV and the sort of contemporary freak show. And within this contemporary freak show, Alison Ledley was referencing to shows like Super Size vs Super Skinny and Embarrassing Bodies, tapping into our human urges and nature to sort of leer at unusual bodies, like people used to do when they went to attend freak shows. Obviously, freak shows fell out of favor in, I believe it was the mid 1900s because of ethical and moral concerns. But this is simply transferred to the reality TV medium. And in this video, I argued that the freak show can actually, it bleeds outside of just the very literal but accurate interpretation of being related to the body. And I actually think that the contemporary freak show can relate to people who we perceive as very different from us. So I used the example of the working class in that video and how the working class are one of the only TV and film industry mediums where the working class are overrepresented is within reality TV. And oftentimes this representation is rooted in negative stereotypes like the Jeremy Kyle show. But something I did touch on in that video that I said I was going to make this podcast episode about, so that's why we're here, is reality TV's exploitation of women's desire to get married. So I'm thinking of The Ultimatum, Love is Blind, and Married at First Sight. And, you know, sort of in that contemporary freak show, we're sort of leering and pointing and laughing and being shocked by the spinster woman. I will say this is much less of a trope in Married at First Sight. I would say Married at First Sight doesn't feel like a super sort of gendered show. Meanwhile, The Ultimatum and especially Love is Blind feels really, really gendered. And there's a very large gender imbalance with the women who are sorry, Boots is being crazy. The women who are fighting for their marriages. They want to get married. They're fighting to get married. Meanwhile, the men are just so blasé. They're just so unbothered. And that is a recurring trope over and over and over again. They'll always add like the one token man who sort of is getting led on by the woman. But that's only like maximum one person a season. Most of the time, it is the women begging men to marry them. And this episode was inspired by Tell the Beast Substack, who I also follow on TikTok. I'm obsessed with her. And it is called The Sociology of Begging Someone to Marry You. I highly, highly recommend. Josh highlights the not only Love is Blind and The Ultimatum, but also the subreddit Waiting to Wed. If you haven't heard of this subreddit, it's basically, again, 99% women exchanging stories, asking for advice, giving advice on how to get their partners to propose. And Josh highlights in his Substack that it seems to be split into two camps. Sorry, I'm back. Boots is like, she's not on her worst behavior because I'm happy to see her like this because I think she's been a little bit anxious for the past few days. I don't really know, like she's absolutely fine now, but she was a bit anxious the past few days, wasn't really acting like herself. She wasn't eating a lot either. She's literally completely back to normal now, so it's totally fine. I think she did just have anxiety because we've had lots of people in and out of the house this week and she doesn't really deal with guests super, super well. So she's been feeling a bit anxious, so she hasn't been acting like her usual self, and now she is, and obviously I'm happy, but it's like, babe, you couldn't have waited to start acting like yourself again until after podcast recording. Like, you know how I knew that she must have been feeling really anxious? She didn't wake me up at 4 a.m. to feed her, and I woke up at 4 a.m, and I was like, why hasn't she asked me to feed her? So I woke her up. I know, I'm a fucking idiot. I woke her up like, do you want some food? Because I'm just worried about her, but she's fine now. But anyways, so in this Waiting to to Wed subreddit seems to be split into two camps of women who have been with their partners for like 10 plus years. They've got multiple kids and they see sort of marriage as this next step in their relationship, and they don't understand why their partner isn't proposing when they've quote unquote done everything else. And then there's another sort of subsection of women who are pretty early on in their relationships, but they see marriage as a key stage in that, and only been with their partner for 2 or 3 years, and they're like, I want him to propose. It's the absolute next step that needs to happen before we do everything else. And another thing, which, I watched this not even thinking about this podcast episode that I was going to make. Me and my stepdad, first of all, so cute. It was Father's Day last weekend. So I saw my real dad on the Sunday, and then I saw my stepdad on the Friday, and we had like a sleepover. We got sweets, we got snacks, we watched films, one of those films being Deep Blue Sea. And we decided to watch Sweet Bobby because I hadn't seen it before, but I'd heard so much about it. And I think Sweet Bobby, which if you haven't watched it, it's this story about how this woman is in this online relationship with this guy for 10 years, never met him, and essentially things are not as they seem. What a shock. And I think Sweet Bobby really highlighted essentially this woman, this poor woman who I do feel very sorry for. She accepted some like insane treatment, and she turned a blind eye to a lot of stuff and was really ignoring the red flags just because she wanted to get married so badly. I think the reason why I'm making this episode and I'm calling it Women Who Beg Men to Marry Them is that this is a gendered issue. Like if you look at the Waiting to Wed subreddit, it's 99% women. If you look at shows that sort of have a marriage crux, marriage is a key part of the storyline, like Love is Blind and The Ultimatum, far more often than not, it is the women begging the men to marry them. And I think that as onlookers, for example, when we're watching reality TV, the contemporary freak show, we are looking at this like, what the fuck are they thinking? What are they thinking? Especially when, I think we can all agree here that begging someone to marry you is incredibly unromantic. And I guess sort of the immediate thing that runs through our heads is, why would someone beg someone to marry them? Why would they want to do this? We don't understand. Why would you want to marry someone who clearly doesn't want to marry you? But I want to come at this from, and I hope we can all come at this together from an empathetic perspective. It's very easy as someone who, I'm single, I'll share my thoughts on marriage in a second, but I'm someone who I'm leaning towards, I really don't think that I want kids, and I don't really want to go through this nuclear life path. So marriage isn't really a super necessary stage in my life for sort of fulfillment, if that makes sense. Like, a lot of people who really want, the white picket fence and the 2.5 kids, they view marriage as a necessary step for that, which is why so much sort of stress and emphasis is placed on it. But I want to come at this from an empathetic perspective, because it's very, very easy for us as outsiders to sort of point and laugh and roll our eyes and think, God, how stupid, why don't they just descend to men, all of this. But it's not as simple as that for a lot of women. And the perspective which I am coming from is, this is sort of this from a heterosexual perspective, because obviously I'm talking about sort of the very gendered dynamics of women who beg men to marry them, but also non-religious as well. I'm looking at marriage as people sort of see it as like this unity of love, this great declaration of love, and this sort of key life step, which a lot of people feel like they need to take. So firstly, I want to discuss, why do people want to get married in the first place? And before getting into this, I want to discuss my sort of, I guess, slightly untraditional, like personal opinions on marriage. And this isn't me saying that everyone needs to agree with me on these opinions. These are literally just my opinions. I don't care what people think about marriage. Everybody's on their own journey, guys. So I think that, to be fair, I think that a lot of people's opinions on marriage are rooted in, what a shock, their upbringing, the way they've been socialized. My parents, Mum and my dad, they have been separated for as long as I can remember. And my stepdad has been my stepdad since I was around 2 or 3 years old. My stepdad's been there for as long as I can remember. So my mum and dad were never married, and my mum and stepdad didn't get married until I was 21. So I never grew up going to loads of weddings. I didn't really know like a ton of my parents weren't married, so I was never really fussed on marriage. And also I think, you sort of have that bit of a chip on your shoulder when you're like 15 and you have not divorced parents, but you have parents parents that are separated, you're like, I don't believe in marriage because it just ends in divorce. But now that I'm an adult and I've had like multiple long-term romantic relationships, my thoughts on marriage is, I guess it's slightly untraditional because I would love to get married. Again, like, you never know, things can really change, but at the moment, I don't think that I'll ever want kids. And I'm someone who I really, really thought that I did want kids in my at least I only wanted one child in my last relationship. And again, it could change when I get into another relationship, but my opinions have really, really swung the other way. It's more when you do the work that I do and you are awoken to how much having a child impacts your career, and how much the, division of household labor is so unequal. I don't think that I want to do it. And like, also I have noticed, but by the way, I'm not someone who hates kids. I love kids. I have a little sister who's adorable. But I've noticed that when I'm around like groups of children or like groups of parents who all have their kids with them, it just like, it's so weird, and I would love to know if anybody else feels this way, but it like drains me to a different degree. And I'm not even talking to these children. I'm talking like, me and my parents will be in a restaurant and there will be like a table full of parents and like very young kids next to us. And for some reason, it actually drains the life out of me. And I feel a bit depressed when I'm around loads of children. Like, I don't know what it is. I just don't think it's an environment that I really enjoy nor thrive in. And I know that a lot of people do thrive in those kinds of environments. So I'm not sure if I want to have kids. I'm very much leaning towards no. And I'm also not sure if I ever want to live with my partner again. Because it's an environment that I didn't thrive in. And obviously like things can change, but I have such a great time living with my best friend. And I know that me and my housemate aren't going to live together forever, but I would love to live with friends for the rest of my life, not going to lie, because I just prefer the boundaries that you have with friends than when you live with your partner. When you live with your partner, everything is so intertwined, everything is so like together, and I just feel like there's no boundaries there, and I like, at least on my end, I like struggle to keep a relationship alive in that kind of environment. I just find it all very, very lethargic, and so that's something that I don't really want to do again. But I would marry someone without living with them. And I know that sounds so stupid. But like, I would not want to live with my husband. Like, if we don't have kids, I don't want to live with my husband. I'm sorry. Like, is that crazy? Like, I just want to like live with my friends and my housemates. And this is the thing, I know things are going to change as I get older. All of my coupled up friends are going to move in with their partners and start having kids. But I do have like a small group of friends of mine who, there's like 3 of us who we know that we don't want to have kids. So I would like love to be able to live with them, and we could have like our lovely house where we live together and we don't live with our partners or anything. Like, yeah, no, that's like, I know that's like slightly untraditional. But like, I think again, it's like, I love the romance of marriage. Like, I'm not even thinking about the tax breaks because obviously we wouldn't even be living together. So like, what benefits are we really reaping? But I just love the thought of like, and again, I would only want a very small wedding. Like, I'm talking ceremony with 10 people, reception with like 50, which is still expensive. And I want to get married in London. Like, stop! Like, that's like my dream, but I don't want to live with them and I don't have kids with them. But a lot of people, there's multiple reasons why people want to get married. One of those being the legal protection which marriage provides. According to Woolley & Co solicitors, thank you Woolley & Co, when you get married, the types of legal protections you can expect are tax breaks and exemptions, married couples allowance, the ability to transfer assets between spouses to minimize tax liabilities, no inheritance tax needs to be paid by your spouse if the other one passes, all assets become joint, and this is like quite useful for home ownership, for example. So if you get married and one of you owns a home and one of you doesn't, by that marriage, that home immediately becomes both of yours. And also you sort of have joint / equal parental responsibility when you are married. But also a lot of people want to get married like myself because they think it's just the most romantic declaration of love. Like, I just want one of my friends to get married soon. We're going to the chapel and we're gonna get married. So a lot of people want to get married for the sort of declaration of love, but also a lot of people want to get married because of the security that some people feel within marriage. A lot of people view marriage as the most devoted commitment that you could make to another person. You know, it's a public declaration of their love to you, and a lot of people see marriage as a necessary life step if you own together or have children or you want to do those things. Again, a lot of people who want to follow the nuclear life path of, you know, college, job, marriage, house, kids, they see marriage as a key part to that. And I think a lot of people who have partners who don't want to marry them despite owning a house and having kids, they see that and perceive that as their partner not being committed to them or not wanting to commit to them. Even though a lot of people would argue that owning a house together and having children together is also, you know, as equal, if not a bigger commitment than getting married. But a lot of people but to be fair, like, I understand where these people are coming from because, you know, we already have everything else together. Why won't you propose to me? Like, I completely understand the frustration that must stem from that. And it must be really interesting where these men who they have kids and they have a house and they live with their partners and they've been together for over 10 years and they will not propose. Is it because they view marriage as such a big commitment? And it is crazy to view marriage as more of a commitment than owning a property together, or more importantly, having kids. Having kids is the largest commitment you can have to another person, you know? And I think the crazy thing about having kids with someone, you know, you can get married and obviously divorce is so horrendous and messy and everything's joint and it's all a bloody state. But when you have kids with someone, you've got to stay in that person's life forever. You know, my dad lives now in the same town as my mum. My mum and dad live in the same area. And I just find that so crazy that, like, my mum can run into her ex at any point. Oh, so let's talk about the current place of marriage in contemporary culture, because we're at a very interesting point, right? Where not only has the, you know, amount of people getting married significantly reduced, you know, and that's alongside birth rates, and the number of single people has actually increased by a lot. The age and price of marriage and weddings is rising and increasing year on year, and this is alongside birth rates dropping, but also the number of single people rising. So I want to answer why this is sort of throughout this podcast episode. So, marriage delays due to financial constraints. Nobody can bloody afford it. I cannot get over how expensive weddings are. I also can't believe that people spend a lot of money on weddings. I think that it's kind of a waste of money, low-key. But this is the thing. Even the smaller ones, like my dream wedding, of getting married in London in a town hall and like having a reception at like a restaurant and like potentially slipping some money under the table to do a lock-in, doing a little afters at my house, that is still probably going to run me, what, 10 grand maybe? Because obviously I'll be providing the food and the alcohol. Yeah, like, come on. But not only are, you know, marriages getting delayed because of financial constraints, but also we're at a very interesting point within society where people are speeding up their relationships also due to financial constraints. Moving in being one example. I know multiple people who have moved in with their partners probably quicker than they would like because it's all they can afford, or because they want to move out of their house share, or because they want to reduce the price of their house share by moving their partner in. And I think this is where already I can see some of the issues arising of people who want to get married to their partners, but their partners don't want to marry them, is that there seems to be a little bit of a mismatch and a discrepancy where people are taking sort of quite large steps in their relationships, like moving in together to save money, but they don't want to make these larger steps like getting married because they can't afford it. Do you see the issues that start cropping up? And obviously this leads to a class divide within marriage. Obviously more middle and upper class people are going to be getting married than working class people, and this matches up and also is exacerbated by the fact that dating apps are contributing to income inequality, because as much as people say that dating apps really help broaden your horizons, and you can date people from so many different walks of life, people that you have no mutual friends with, but also you can pretty easily tell someone's class through their dating app. More than one skiing picture, private school. But also what is also contributing to less marriages is the growing political divide between young men and women. Young men are getting more right-wing, young women are getting more left-wing. Politics is growing more and more important, especially with young women. A lot, you know, it used to be a pretty commonly held notion probably like 10 years ago. It used to be like, I mean, I used to like agree with this as well. Like 10 years ago when I was like 17, 18, I used to think that you could be friends with people who had different political leanings to you. Not sure about relationships, but I did believe that you could put politics aside and be friends with someone. Obviously, this is something that I completely disagree with now. And it's actually really interesting how much the culture has changed within 10 years, where so many women, myself included, would never date someone who does not align politically with them, let alone be friends with someone who doesn't align with them politically. But also, not only are women raising their standards in terms of wanting to find a partner who's politically aligned with them, but also they want to raise their standards of who they want to spend their life with and who they could potentially have children with. There are far more open conversations and research on the realities of marriage and children and the unequal division of household labor amongst men and women. Regardless of the amount of hours you work outside of the house or how much money you earn, most likely as a woman you'll be picking up far more domestic labor, unpaid labor around the house than your male partner. I also think that a lot of men are wanting to be single for longer. I've spoken about this before, but sex addiction, which is facilitated via dating apps. I've said this before, so I'll keep it really, really quick. But when we think of sex addiction, we often think of someone who is addicted to the act of having sex. And I actually think kind of sort of culture and phenomenon that dating apps have brought about are men who aren't necessarily addicted to the sex, but they're addicted to the chase, they're addicted to the process, they're addicted to the endorphin rush that they get from dating someone new. And dating apps make dating someone new so much easier. With dating apps, everybody is expendable. But also I think more, especially women, are single because I think more emphasis is being placed on the importance of friendship. We've seen this emphasis like widespread amongst women on TikTok within pop culture. Obviously shows like Sex and the City. I was going to say girls, but all those girls hated each other, but you know what I mean. And Dolly Alderton's memoir, Everything I Know About Love. We've really seen a female friendship renaissance and it's been beautiful to see. And also I think we're witnessing more conversations about the fact that a lot of straight men don't have any friends or are very bad at like maintaining friends and don't keep in touch with their friends and the sort of impact that has on them. I spoke with my therapist about this before, but like so many men maintain their friendships through their partner. Their partner is the one who makes the plans, organizes the dinners, this, that, and the other, and the man just sort of tags along and goes with it and sort of just lets these friendships just happen to him. A lot of straight men, they really like, and I've seen this personally, they really don't make a lot of effort to maintain their friendships. I actually saw this book in Waterstones, but I didn't end up picking it up. It's called Billy No Mates, and it's about the male friendship crisis. And it's really interesting that when I see, discourse about the male loneliness epidemic on social media, and it's so interesting how the conversation is centered around why women are causing the male loneliness epidemic. Or, a cure-all for the male loneliness epidemic is if they had partners. The reason why there is a male loneliness epidemic is because women are not wanting to couple up with men. I very rarely, if ever, see men discussing a part of the reason for, by the way, it's not a male loneliness epidemic, it's a loneliness epidemic, period. Everybody's feeling lonely. Everybody's spending more time alone. I very rarely see men, when discussing the male loneliness epidemic, talk about the fact that men are very bad, straight men are very bad at maintaining friendships with one another. And this is probably a large contributing factor. But not only is more emphasis being placed on the importance of friendship to women, but women are building fulfilling lives outside of romantic relationships, which is really raising the bar. I know a lot of women, myself included, who would rather be alone than be in a relationship where they're not happy. But there is still a very large subsection of women, like the women who beg men to marry them, who would rather be in a relationship where they are unhappy than be in no relationship at all. And I want to get into why this is. So why do women beg men to marry them? Or why do these women on the Waiting to Wed subreddit and also, participants in Love is Blind beg men to marry them? Well, as I mentioned earlier, there's the legal protections that marriage provides and the security which a lot of women feel if they get married. Or more rather, I think it's the security they think they're going to feel when they get married. But I'm sure that once they actually walk down the aisle, they stick a ring on it, I'm sure that insecurity that they feel will still be there. But again, as I mentioned earlier, marriage is a key part of the nuclear life path. The nuclear life path, in my opinion, is much more enforced on women than men, because growing up, at least in my experience, growing up as a girl, the idea of motherhood is really pushed onto us for a very, very young age. I mean, think about some of the first gifts that you receive as a toddler are little baby dolls to look after. Meanwhile, emphasis on being a father is not placed onto young boys, which I think contributes to why so many women feel this pressure to go down this nuclear life path. And also I think because as a single woman, being a single woman is stigmatized in a different way, which I am going to get into in just a moment. But I think something which really, and again, I'm not speaking for everybody in the waiting to wed subreddit, but sort of just on the topic of, when women beg men to marry them, it really does break my heart when you see someone in a relationship with someone who hates them. And that, I know it sounds like a very, very strong statement, and this is not the case all the time, trust me. But I think, I want to know if you guys have experienced this, but I've spoken with girls and guys about this. The universal experience of being in a relationship with someone who hates you. And I'm applying this sort of through a heterosexual lens, because a lot of men do not like women. A lot of men do not like women. They can't stand women. They don't like women's company. They don't like women's temperament. They don't like women who are loud. They don't like women who make jokes. They don't like any of that. But they just want to fuck them. So that leads to a subsection of misogynistic men who are in relationships with women that they do not like. They do not like these women, but they want to fuck them, and they want these women to have their kids. And this desire to be in a unhappy relationship rather than being alone is a direct result of the deprioritization of friendship in contemporary society. And to be fair, I think friendship has always been not prioritized within all society. It's not just a contemporary society issue. But this is a byproduct of placing marriage and the nuclear family on a pedestal for women for their entire lives. They do not nurture the friendships in their lives, and they believe that the nuclear family, they believe their romantic relationship, they believe their wedding is of the utmost importance. It takes number one spot on the priority list. And I think also this, women who beg men to marry them, it's a direct result of the loss of community. Marriage is almost seen as a cure-all for the loneliness epidemic. I think that the death of community, there's so many contributing factors to it. There's rising living costs, being forced to live far apart from one another due to these rising living costs, increased working hours, transactionality culture within late-stage capitalism. When the only labor which is valued is paid labor, people will begin to take this notion into their everyday lives and view everyone's actions, including their own, through this transactional lens. I also think something which contributes to the death community is the fact that people do spend so much more time alone because of the damn phones. We are being entertained to death. We're being entertained to death. My sort of real hot take with loneliness epidemic caused by phones, the more time we spent on these damn phones, the more time we spend alone. And not only is that due to the illusion of company through, the texts and the WhatsApps and the videos you're watching, but also so much of, planning, social planning is driven through boredom. And we can't be bored when we've got these damn phones all the time, especially now we have For You algorithms. We don't have to choose what we want to watch anymore. And through this loss of community has come a privatization of love. And Sean Fay wrote about the crisis of expectation in her book Love in Exile, which is one of my favorite reads of the year. I absolutely loved it, where basically because our communities have gotten smaller and smaller and smaller, and because love has become more and more privatized, we are expecting a lot from our partners now. We're expecting someone who is the love of our life, who we love to spend time with, who makes us laugh, but also who provides for us and also provides emotional support for us. And I think that we are expecting a lot from men who have not been socialized in this way. And I want to make it clear that there is nothing wrong with desiring marriage or desiring being in a romantic relationship. But I think it's when you begin desiring a romantic relationship at the expense of your emotional well-being is where something has clearly gone wrong. The last little segment of this episode is I want to talk about the demonization of the spinster, which I think is another contributing factor. as to why some women beg men to marry them. They don't want to be a spinster. I think the word demonization is a bit aggressive. I don't think the spinster is seen as someone who's like threatening. I think the spinster is seen as a very sad figure. And I think that this can be illustrated through the way that single women are stigmatized versus the way that single men are stigmatized, especially older single women and men who are in their sort of late 30s, early 40s, 50s, so on and so forth. I think when a man is single into his 40s and 50s, it's seen, at least this is just anecdotally from, eavesdropping on my parents' conversations growing up, it's almost seen as a sign of immaturity. Someone's like, oh God, he never grew up, did he? Oh, he's such a, the bachelor. Oh, he's such a bachelor. Oh, and this is the thing, is that the single man, at least the single man in my perspective is like, the sort of bachelor single man. It's seen as like, oh, but he just can't get the women away from him. He just doesn't want to settle down. It's his choice. That's how it's painted. It's his choice that he's single. Meanwhile, the single woman is stigmatized as sad and desperate, and that her singleness is not her choice. And that's a different kind of stigma to sort of carry around with you. People viewing you as not single out of choice. Singleness is still seen as a transitional phase in your life. And I think that being single for a year now is like really interesting experience, being a single woman. Like, obviously I'm a young single woman, I'm 26, so I don't feel like I'm being pressured by anybody around me to meet someone, but I have noticed that the way that people speak to you when you're single is really interesting, where, and I get it if I'm going through a tough dating time and someone's like, oh, you'll find someone, like you do sort of want that like coddling and advice sometimes, but like sometimes people do say things like, oh, I'm sure you'll meet someone, and it's like, oh, I actually didn't say anything about meeting someone. But and that's the thing, comments like that, it then puts pressure on it, because I found my experience being single is that, I've spoken about it a lot on the podcast. Overall, it's been positive. I have also learned so much about myself through dating. Guys, I can't believe I'm saying this. I can feel myself like teetering out of my dating break. I went on a dating break for a couple of months, and I can feel something rumbling under the surface. I think I'm ready to throw myself back into it, which, to be fair, it's gonna be a bit difficult because I am like so busy this summer, which I think makes it better because it makes the stakes a lot lower, and it makes it like, it can just be a bit of fun. I have enjoyed being single, but also I think something that I'm still trying to like overcome is this like sense of anxiety that I feel. It's really interesting that this anxiety, I have experienced this very like low level anxiety about what if I never meet someone? What if I meet someone that's not good enough? Because I very rarely meet people that I like, and when I do, they are always assholes. Like, it's actually like honestly impressive. Like, every single time I meet someone I like, which by the way I think has happened a grand total of twice in the past year, to be fair, maybe asshole's a bit of a strong word, but it hasn't worked out, right? So that's sort of my sort of anxiety, is that it's like I very rarely meet someone I like, and when I do meet someone I like, it doesn't work out. So it's like, or they don't sort of reach the expectations that I have for them in my head. This is the problem, is that I build these men up in my head so much, and then they very inevitably disappoint me. Something which really contributes to this demonization of, the single woman, the spinster, but just single people in general, is the systemic penalizations of being single. There's this, people call it the single tax. You can't split rent, build, food, shopping, holidays. And when you're single, you may have to live in a house share into your 40s, which, look, for some people, like I would love to live in a house share with my friends, is ideal. But a lot of people don't want to do that. A lot of people want to live on their own, but can't afford it unless they had a partner. And again, because of how house shares are viewed, people view living in house shares into your 40s as a sign of immaturity rather than a sign of economic necessity. And also, what I want to finish this episode on is, I think, something which really contributes to sort of this demonization of the spinster, and the fact that women are viewed as like single, not out of choice, meanwhile single men are viewed as, this was their choice, this was their life, this they chose it, is there is a new stigma attached to being single. I read this article on The Atlantic by Faith Hill. I think it's literally called The New Single Stigma. And it's this new stigma about being single is if you are someone who's single who wants to be in a relationship, it is so interesting how it's stigmatized. Like, if you are single, you you cannot let it falter that you want to meet someone, because then people go, oh, but you're so lucky, and oh, but you'll meet someone, and you sort of get this symphony, is that the right word? Of like ohs and like empathetic looks, and I never ever want to be viewed in that way. Like, I had a crisis with my therapist the other day where I was like, do people view me in this way? Do people view me as a sad single person? Like, I think that's something that I'm like grappling with a couple of weeks ago. I grappled with it a couple of weeks ago about how, like, do people view me as someone who's sad? Like, am I viewed as like a sad single person? And I think a lot of that has got to do with the stigma that is attached to being a single woman. And I think that's why women beg men to marry them. And I hope that we can like all discuss this through an empathetic lens. We may not understand what it's like to be in the headspace of begging someone to marry you, but I still think we can approach this with like empathy and kindness. But yes, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode rather. I really want to wrap this up because I'm burning a candle because of my drain smell from my bathroom, and it's giving me a really bad headache. So I'm gonna go, but I am really excited for the next episode, which will be the Glastonbury debrief, and I'll see you guys soon for another episode. Bye!